neuromuscular system that you can transition if you do it appropriately.
So we're talking about folks who, need to work on things, It's interesting. It's always nice to see like the examples. I think we do learn a lot. Had two individuals. Let's talk about real quickly. One guy came in. We were doing a shoe study 5 years ago, and basically this one guy came in, and he's a local UVA runner. One of the top 5 in the team. Basically came in. One of the things we're looking at was classifying foot type. When he took his shoes off, I was like, oh my god! He was just. It was the flattest foot I'd ever seen in my entire life. Beyond flat. His navicular, which is, which literally became a weight-bearing bone. It's the type of thing you see is truly, devastatingly pathologic. Changes that occur later on in life, and we do lots of, sort of procedures to alter things. The guy ran a 14:30, 5K, and, so nobody ever told him he had this flat foot. Nobody ever told him it was a problem, so he was fine, he was fine. And you watch him run, he get wonderful form. So here's somebody who had some structural changes which were several standard deviations away from what everybody in this room would consider normal, yet he was fine, uninjured, no problems. Another runner came in last week in the lab. I talk about in subjective history with folks, and gee, what are your issues? What's been going on? Yada yada. He was there just to see if he could get some performance gain, and we're talking about shoe wear. I was like, oh, what are you in? He goes, I run a Nike Freeze. I said, okay, how many miles do you got? Get out of a pair of shoes? Typically 12 to 1400 is what he told me. The guy completely uninjured. Not going to say his name. You'll be seeing him a lot in the national circuit. There's a guy who basically started running about 2 years ago, played competitive soccer in college, and he's probably the medal around his neck one day. Somebody who just has great, phenomenal running form. When you talk about some of the best biomechanical form I've seen, and here's a guy who just started running 2 years ago. So I think there's some folks who do have good form. I don't want people to take away this idea that you have to work on it. We're all doomed. People do get this, but in both those cases, the guy who was with the severe, flat foot wasn't in a super rigid Brooks Beast. He was in a cushion running, just to think of as a kind of simple minimal shoe. Back in the day, ran a lot of his miles in flats. The guy who came in, running 1,400 miles on a pair of Nike Frees, he said he basically throws them away when he can see the last through the outsole. So it's, what's the shoe doing for him? Well, both those individuals have phenomenal form, and so it counts for a lot.
I think one thing is true, that talent does overcome any obstacles you might have. You look at the elite field of the race, not everyone has the best form, but obviously those runners are super talented, so that's one thing to consider, obviously. One thing I'm asked all the time, or especially recently, is this a fad? And at the trade show last week, I think there was 17 different shoe companies, and probably 13 were talking about natural running. And of the couple that weren't, one of them was the SRA leader, and they're about a year out from talking about it. So is it a fad? I think it's never really gone away. Good runners and elite runners have always been running in racing flats or thin shoes to some extent. I think now it's just kind of coming down to the masses after 25 years of what previous shoe design was. One company told me that they think that this will become 20% of their business in the next 2 to 3 years. So that's 1/5 of your business. I guess that's up to you to judge, I guess. So it's for sure here now. Is it a fad? Most people at the similar early morning talk about this said no, they didn't think it was. So this is the trade show last week. One of the things to take away is that everyone is getting lighter. Everyone is getting more nimble with their shoes. And so motion control shoes are going down in sales, obviously. Traditional trainers are getting lighter. And so that trend is coming down because of what we're learning on the design front on the minimal shoes. So the trend is that everything keeps getting lighter as materials get lighter, and people kind of demand more light shoes. So is it a fad? I don't think so, from what I've seen. But like I said, every other brand was talking about it last week. So I guess going forward, from the retail point of view, these guys all here want to be able to decide what they're going to do and how they're going to change their MO, I guess. But the question I'll ask again is it possible for every runner to become a better runner with natural running? Danny, try it.
I nod my head right away. If you got 2 usable legs, like Irene was saying, if you got decent, 2 pair of legs, you should be able to be a great runner. And I've even coached somebody with prosthetic legs, and he was a great runner. So if you have the willingness to move your body and change and work at it, you can become a great runner. We were all great runners as kids. You got to understand, you don't just watch kids run great and just say, well, where did they learn that? We ran that way too. So the whole idea is to unwork all of this stuff that you've taken on from lifestyle habits. And that's really what running education is about, is like really learning, unlearning, you know. And so it's not a fad. We want to break the idea that it's a fad or a myth that you can change your running form. You can absolutely change your running. You can change the structure of your body, not just change your running form. You can actually, the body is adaptable, like Jay was saying. You can change your musculature. You can change how that acts. You know, so it's all really about how you go about doing it. You know, and convince your clients that it's really worth it. They can spend so much on running shoes and run a certain way, or they can spend a little bit on learning how to run, and that's an insurance policy for the quality of life from here on. That's what we're talking about. It's not a fad. It's something about changing the evolution of how people approach running and walking, you know, from this day forward. So it's definitely not a fad. I'm sure there have been in the recent past some shoe companies that were hoping it was a fad because their entire industry was built on big-heeled shoes. So they're hoping it's a fad, but it is absolutely not a fad.
There we go.
I agree, it's not a fad, and I think that one of the things that maybe you all can help us with is we have to get at the grassroots. We have to make inroads into the schools, because I get so many parents that come to me and say, you know, I want my kids to wear minimal shoes, and they won't let it. They won't let them. You know, they come in with a pair of minimal shoes, and the coach says you can't wear those. So I think education right now is really, really critical, and you know, maybe you could volunteer to go in and talk to a coach. And talk to them, educate them about footwear, what you know about footwear. Because I think it's a lot of education. They think that they're going to be at risk by putting their kids in less shoes, and really their risk is increased, I think, by putting them in these more bulky, beefy shoes. So I'd really like to encourage people and all of us to try to make those inroads in the schools, in the high schools, in the middle schools. Because then maybe we can keep those kids running like they ran. We won't have to undo something. You know, if they started out with that beautiful form, let's maintain it.